Welcome to the show, brother.
Hello, brother.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back, Matt.
Love to have you back. It's been how many years?
Oh, I was thinking that before. It had to have been 2021, something
Yeah.
like that. I reckon just as FTX was blowing up, which you're probably going to ask me.
Yes. Let's dive straight into that
I
question.
remember you messaged me and you said, if whatever's going on, I'm hearing it all in the news, you have to come back on. And then obviously life gets...
Well, I think it would have just life happened. When there's just the pod dog, Winnie. You're right.
He's really going to town in my,
There we go.
my
Yeah.
regions. I love
Yes, he is. He likes going down under. All right. So,
it. Yeah. Get it.
Bitcoin, it's blowing up again.
Yeah, it is.
So, do you find it like, I know you've been a big believer in it for a long time.
Yeah, the contrarian.
The
It's just
contrarian.
everyone's mold. Like, what are you doing, you
Do
idiot?
you get like some? Is it good to know like, oh, I probably like was right about this? Because I think whenever you do decide to bet on something that's maybe outside of the norm,
Yeah.
you have lots of those doubts and you have those moments where you have to encounter your own faith about, do I act like what's going to make me keep taking a step forward when I don't see the rest of the staircase?
Yeah.
How does it feel knowing like for example, I've seen enough cycles of it now where it's,
Yeah.
it goes up and it crashes and then it goes back a little bit higher and it's probably it's a pretty standard economic kind of trend that, you would see if you pull away from it. It's happening faster, so you're able to see it
Yeah.
a little bit quicker.
I'm attuned to it. I think that's the big thing, the volatility, the cycles. Most new people just don't know how to handle it. I've been around long enough now to really appreciate that and take out the emotion. And my conviction started off like everyone else, but experience and just being in it for the last, I don't know, when did I get it? 2017. My conviction now is higher than it ever was. And that's not just because price is going up, it's because of a lot of geopolitical and macro events. And just the success of it bounces back each time. It's math, it's code, it's truth. So when you see... So, okay, the biggest thing for me is I think we all can sense somewhere, and it's getting louder, that the economy is broken or something is wrong and we just don't know, we can't put our finger on it. And then you see something like Bitcoin start to run higher. You see gold starting to run higher. It's kind of like this hard money standard that we're trying to pivot back towards because trust is being lost in the current financial system, which is essentially just based on faith and paper. There's nothing backing our currency, like the Australian dollar. There's nothing backing that. There's nothing backing the US dollar. And the overriding conviction in my mind is always, if we continue to print more money, the denominator against Bitcoin, which is finite, and something like gold, which is not finite, but there's a limited supply, it's scarce, those will always continue to rise in price against something that you can just have a printer in your back room and keep printing out, which the government is addicted to it. And that's not stopping. And we're kind of approaching I guess, I look at things at a really high level. And in my mind, and this might sound really doomerish, but it seems like we're getting closer to empire collapse, like the Roman Empire towards the end part. And don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly bullish and positive for the future, but we need to get through this phase. And it's actually called the fourth turning, where we have historical cycles and economic cycles and technology cycles, sort of, it's all coming to a head in the same era here. So it's going to get really uncomfortable, I think, for a little while as we see this transition. I hate saying it's a hard reset. It's kind of because World Economic Forum and other bankers like to say that, we want a new world order and we need to change things. But unfortunately, that's what we're going to see because we're running out of... all our time value and energy is being slowly debased constantly. We're working harder for longer without reward. Our wages aren't going up. Asset price inflation. The big thing as well for me is people are really having their eyes open because of inflation. If inflation wasn't here, it would still be a little bit ho-hum. But when everyone sees that they're working harder for longer and everything they want to achieve in life starts to become more difficult, because of something they don't really understand. And they're like, why is everything getting more expensive? And at a real core level, there are other factors, but at a core level, it's because we continue to debase the unit of account that we value everything in. So if that's constantly getting lower, it's just going to get harder. And we're chasing these goalposts that continually get moved further away from us, and it's decided by people who are unelected, who we really have no sway over. So there needs to either be massive revolution in the current system, or, and this is hopefully the more diplomatic, less violent and more positive solution, is we just move to a parallel system, which you're kind of seeing that now. It's shifting towards something like Bitcoin, crypto and all that. And it's still very much in its infancy, but it's happening.
When you say things like inflation, I understand that a lot of people don't understand it. What would be like a really simple way that you would, or like a metaphor that you use to explain that to somebody who maybe doesn't fully get it?
Inflation. So I guess it's just where the price of goods and services continues to, I guess, outpace. That's a really good question. I've never thought about it really simply. I always think things in a macro sense. I kind of look at it, okay, in a real simple sense. If you're looking at your bank account, your savings account, if you're getting an interest rate on the money in that bank account, if that's 5%, but the inflation rate that the government's telling you, say 8%, you're losing 3% every year of your money to inflation. It's kind of like a hurdle that's constantly moving away from people. And when I say the monetary debasement, it's a very simple sense. If you have money in your bank account and you are constantly taking out, you spend all that money, but you're taking credit out from credit cards left, right, and centre, and you're constantly just pulling credit. Eventually, that system has to stop. There has to be checks and balances somewhere, and that's kind of like what they're doing here. They're just printing more money, creating more debt out of thin air, and it's devaluing our money and our currency that's out there currently. And that, when there's more money in the system, people spend more, it pushes up the price of everything around you. And then you have geopolitical events in the world where, let's say Russia invades Ukraine. Those are two countries with tremendous physical resources in the world that, as a globalized economy, we were pulling from them constantly, getting their petroleum products, their food products, all that. When they just crash together, suddenly a third of the world's oil supply went offline. All that kind of stuff adds up. So that filters out to the rest of the economy, and suddenly if a good that we use every day, like oil, suddenly becomes scarcer, then the price of that at your Bowser, at everywhere, trucks, transport from farm to supermarket, if those costs for the people in between go up, they have to pass on that cost, and that pushes up inflation higher. And we're sort of seeing it from, again, the monetary standpoint, where the currency's being just printed and debased underneath us. Then you're seeing a lack of supply of, say, housing, and then you've got massive amounts of immigration and foreign buyers coming in. So there's not, it just constantly pushes up the price again. And then you see these first homeowner grants and different stimulus packages that the government gives out, thinking that that is a solution, and it's not. You're just handing more money out to people who want to get into the housing market, and then suddenly they have a lot more money, and then they push that into the bidding process, and it pushes things up. So it is a bit of a spiral, and I don't know how we get out of it without a hard default, a hard recession, which is just it's unconscionable for the political class, because no politician will get elected if they say, we need to have a hard reset. We need to let the property market absolutely bust, which would likely put a lot of Australians out of a house and a home because they can't afford their mortgage. And they go, well, this is unsustainable. We need to just kill it. No politician's going to get elected on that. The boomers would never allow it. All this kind of stuff. So it's a very tricky situation. But I don't see it a solution coming from the current system. I see us looking to some alternative, which is just an easier path, and I hope that's the case.
And things like how does Bitcoin become an alternative amongst that?
Yeah, so back to that example with the currency being debased, there's an unlimited supply of units, and they just constantly create more units either through debt or just printing money out of thin air, digital units on a centralized ledger. Bitcoin is a decentralized open source ledger, so exactly the same, but decentralized, so no central authority or party has control over it, but it's mathematically programmed to only have 21 million Bitcoin ever. So there's that hard money programmable standard that's there. It's immutable. Everyone can see it. It's transparent, and it's just math. There's no one behind it. It's been created. You can't, change it. Essentially, there are ways to change it, but you'd need to get essentially the majority of the network agreeing to something, which never bloody happens. But right now, 21 million units, and then you see over here the current system where we we save an AUD, which is constantly getting eaten slowly by that inflation we talked about. So in a very simplistic manner, Bitcoin isn't actually becoming more valuable. One Bitcoin's always worth one Bitcoin, but the currency we denominate in AUD is getting, it's becoming more inflated. There's more units in the system. So in a pure sense, if you're trying to trade Bitcoin for AUD, if AUD keeps getting printed to buggery and then we see Bitcoin just constantly getting scarce and no one wanting to sell it, it's that effect that slowly happens over time. And we're seeing it. Bitcoin never makes a lower low. So if you pull up a chart, every 4 years, there's what's called the halving cycle, where not only is there 21 million units, but every 4 years, the supply to market, so the miners that mine the Bitcoin, the amount that they mine per day is cut in half. So there's this tightening effect every 4 years as we lead up to the final 21 million hard cap. So there's a constant scarcity effect versus the other system. And that's why every 4 years we tend to see this big explosion of interest and a massive run-up. And then it tends to overextend, this exuberant, this euphoria where a lot of retail participants come in thinking they're going to get rich, and then they just buy it no matter what, and it just pushes it way overextended. And then we go into a bear market where everyone says it's dead again, and it's killed. But it's not. Even back when after FTX and whatnot, I mean, the low was 15,000, but 4 years before that, it was 3,000. So if you have a long enough time horizon and don't get caught with the emotional side of things, you're in a really good spot.
All right, you've mentioned this in the past. We're going to tie all of these things together, but I'm just trying to establish some foundation concepts for people to understand. What's a bear market?
A bear market. Yeah, so it's when sellers are in control of the price action. So if you just see a sustained period, so let's say FTX blew up in, was it back end of 21 or 22? I can't quite remember anymore. But the bear market essentially ended after Bitcoin had its all-time high, so 69,000, let's say. On the charts, you can kind of see it broke structure. It started to go into a downtrend. It didn't make those higher highs that it was to make that 69,000 anymore. It was then in a downtrend, and it went into a bear market. So that's when sellers are in control and pushing prices lower. Everyone's trying to sort of get out of the market. That's what a bear market is. And then there's kind of like a capitulation phase and an accumulation phase where when everyone's forgotten about it, everyone thinks it's dead. That's when the most value can be found if you're a value investor or you're looking for that longer term investment picture versus buying at the top when it's really frothy. So yeah, that's what a bear market is.
Okay. And is that what we're in right now?
No, we are on the cusp of a pretty epic bull market.
Okay,
so bear and bull.
That brings me to my next question. What's a bull market?
Bull market is when buyers are in control. So on a chart, or maybe you can sense it through social media and whatnot, it's kind of like this effect where when buyers are in control, it starts to make those higher highs where price continues to go higher, obviously, but dips when it actually rolls over a little bit. Those dips are bought. And they're bought really hard. So Bitcoin was at, was it 73,000 last night US? So it's about 112,000 Australian dollars. 73,000, had a roll over, a sell-off overnight, went down to 68, bought straight back up. And it's holding its structure high. And you can see that on a chart. There will be corrections, but broadly, we're going into the halving, which is in April. which we just discussed before. So supply tightens by half. So at a very high level, 900 Bitcoin are mined per day. That drops to 450 the minute the halving happens. So, and we can get to the ETFs in a second, but just right now, there's a demand from ETFs. They're buying 14,000 Bitcoin off the market a day and locking it away. 900 are being mined.
What are ETFs?
So exchange traded funds. And again, I won't get too in the weeds with this, but this was the biggest demand side catalyst for Bitcoin ever. And if you saw this coming, you would have been like, Bitcoin is the no-brainer sort of investment to hold. What they are, if you just go on to, I guess, ComSec, or you go on to a trading website, and you see a ticker that you want to buy, what's good, Apple, you can Google, GOOL or GOG, you can buy any of those tickers, they're stocks. You can go onto any of those sites and you can now buy an ETF, which is a Bitcoin ETF. So you can directly buy Bitcoin. You can put your pension fund into it. You can put your retirement fund in it. And this has unlocked trillions of dollars of capital from, I guess, Wall Street. And I'm guessing most people in here may have heard of BlackRock. They may have not, mostly for nefarious purposes. But they've really led this charge. They've seen Bitcoin for what it is. And there's 9 other big funds and companies that have gotten in on this as well, and they've all launched ETFs for these products. And it's the most successful ETF launch in history, and they are just buying up Bitcoin like you would not believe. So there is, and say what you like about BlackRock, and I certainly don't think they're always good actors. In fact, they've got a lot of bad traits and a lot of bad things that they've done. But they're smart allocators of capital. They're incredibly smart investors. There's a reason why they're top dog. They're number 1 asset manager on the planet. I think they have about 13 trillion under management. And Larry Fink, I heard him speak on CNBC the other day, and he said, the Bitcoin rally right now is a flight to quality. And I've never heard this type of sentiment before. This is, in my view, this entire rally on Bitcoin is not retail speculative driven. This is entirely institutional driven, which is an entire different class. It's like we've jumped the chasm now from the speculation, which we've seen via prior cycles, to now being, this is a real thing. And we've jumped the chasm into mainstream investor adoption. Because these are not small investors. These are investors with $1 billion. These are funds with hundreds of billions of dollars. And they're allocating 1 to 2 to 5% of the best performing asset in history, which is Bitcoin, to their balance sheet right now. And they don't care about the price. They have incredibly long time horizons. They just don't care about the short-term price action. They're thinking, and I've been hearing this a lot because we started an investment fund as well, and we were hearing from other investment managers, especially in the United States, that they're doing kind of service. So some of these ETF players, Bitwise, that's one name, he's gone out and he's done some research and he's asking different smaller players, are you looking at these ETFs? Are you coming in? And they're all looking to come in, and he was asking why. And he said, well, our investors now, and us personally, we are getting very concerned with the debt levels in the United States, because they're adding, on their balance sheet, I think they're at $32 trillion in debt. They're adding $1 trillion of debt to the debt ceiling every 90 days. 1 trillion. And it doesn't matter who's in power. Trump, Biden, I'm not going to get political here. But it just continues to go up. And the United States can continue to do that for quite a while because they're the global reserve currency and there's huge demand in the world for dollars. But it signals to investors that the trust, the issue around trust, debt, currency, it's all tied into one. And if slowly massive investors are kind of thinking, this isn't looking good. Not tomorrow, next week, not month, maybe not next year, but I might need something that could be parallel to this, an insurance policy, a hedge. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. It's 1 to 5% chance, but they still want a piece of it. And the higher it goes, the more they buy, which is kind of very reflexive at this stage. So I'm incredibly bullish. These ETFs are bonkers. And like I said, they're buying 14,000 Bitcoin a day. And that's why we're seeing this incredibly aggressive run-up, because over this last period, since the bear market lows of 15K, there's been psychotic holders. And that's when we call Bitcoin holders that buy through the bear markets. They're psychotic because they come in and they don't care about the price and they just stack. They buy every single week, every single day. That cohort is skyrocketing in terms of how many people are doing this, and they're not selling. They see what's going on, including myself. I'm not selling. I see what's going on. Why would you sell back into a fiat currency like AUD and USD, which is eventually going to self-annihilate? Like, it makes no sense. This is going to continue to go up to infinity if they keep printing money. And it's a trust thing. The minute the trust is gone from yourself, from myself, from the majority of people, if everyone kind of goes, this kind of doesn't make sense that this piece of paper is worth more than this piece of paper, and the government just continues to print and spend. Why are we paying taxes? Like, why can't they just print money to cover our taxes? It explodes. Like, you can see your head kind of just like blowing up. So that's kind of where we're going, and we're at the very beginning stages of that institutional drive. So yeah, I think this next... So generally, Bitcoin bull markets start in earnest, really, after the halving. Bitcoin's already made a new all-time high before the halving. It's unprecedented. It's never done that before. But that's based on these supply and demand dynamics. There's a supply shock. There's just not enough Bitcoin out there, and this institutional drive is so hard. They've got so much money, and they're just buying constantly. So this next phase is going to be very, very interesting. But this bull market could get really insane. We're not seeing the same euphoria that we've seen previously at this point in the cycle for altcoins. So everything else, everyone, the meme coins, Dogecoin, all that kind of stuff. And to a great degree, I think that's a great thing, and maybe also not a great thing for a lot of investors. But if you think about it, these ETFs are just keeping the money within themselves. The Bitcoin's being bought and it's holding. Generally in cycles, we see Bitcoin drive, it goes sideways, and then that money flows down, those profits flow down into the more speculative altcoins, Ethereum, Dogecoin. You just go down to XRP. A lot of people probably listening going, XRP, is it ever going back up? And Dogecoin, all that kind of stuff. But there's so much stress in the economy right now. People don't have a tremendous amount of disposable cash from everything we've just spoken about, how difficult it is out there right now. You're working harder than ever. Any extra income, you kind of put it away for saving for a holiday, at least, like a bit of a break, or extra food on the table per week. No one's really thinking about buying Bitcoin or Dogecoin unless you're, again, a psychotic holder and an investor. So I think we're bypassing a lot of that mania at this stage, and everyone's kind of thinking, hearing in the news, going, "Wait, that's still a thing," but they won't move on it because it's still. There's a lot of battle stress, I think, a lot of scars from the prior cycle with FTX and all that kind of stuff. So
now that comes into the next question that I want to ask, but just as someone who just looks at all of this sort of stuff like in a really amateur way, like I've seen the cycle go up and down a few times, and based on, I guess, what I've seen, there's probably I could be wrong, but it's probably going to crash again, right?
yeah, probably.
And that would be the time to buy, right?
Yeah, I see. And the thing
I know this is not financial advice.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but
not at all. Bitcoin has a history of 30, 40, 60, even 80% drawdowns. What I've been telling our clients and our investors is be very careful from now on with preconceptions, because Wall Street's incredibly good at this, and they're incredibly good at taking people's money. And if people think it's easy and have a preordained plan, they generally pull the rug out from under you. And I've seen that all throughout last year and the start of this year, where clients and just people that aren't clients as well, anecdotally, I'm hearing that they're all waiting for a big dip. They're all waiting for a 20, 30, 40, 50% pullback because we've seen it in the last cycle. I said, guys, you have to know the dynamics of what's going on now. There's a massive bid underneath the price. So if it drops even 5, 8, 10%.
And that's what you were kind of saying before with those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I see.
But I'm not saying that there will be another bear market. But I think what sidelines so many people is they're expecting the last few cycles to play out exactly the same. It rhymes. It often rhymes, but it doesn't repeat. And I think the different part about this cycle is it goes higher than you think and doesn't go as low as you want. And it constantly leaves people sidelined in stables. And so the best approach, and this is not financial, this is my view, is to just over time create a position, dollar cost average in. Don't look at the price. And if you have that high conviction, because that's essentially what I've been doing over the last since 2017, is just buy some every single week, every single month, and don't even look at the price. And it's a way to lower your average buy price, and it just accumulates for you over time. And I look at more Bitcoin now as a savings mechanism versus an investment. And that might sound a bit funny to people because you see how volatile it is, and I agree it is volatile, but if you have a longer term time horizon, if you dollar cost average over the last 10 years, I mean, the amount of money that you're making versus the inflation rate, at least as well, and you've outperformed every other asset on the market, even the S&P 500. So yes, there will be a bear market, but in essence, my sort of base case is that we punch well over 100,000 in US dollars. And then we get, and then there's the euphoric sort of move, 200, 300. I think we could even approach gold's market cap, which is, that would be about $500,000 US in Bitcoin. But then there is a point, and this is where, again, people get a bit locked in narratives where they go, oh, the ETFs are buying, it's never going to come down. That can work in the other direction. People can panic and it drops pretty quick. So there could be a bear market, but it will be much higher than you might expect. So you could see, instead of being at 15,000 bear market low from 69,000, it could be 500,000 as a top, and then it could base at 200 or base at 150. And it all depends on the geopolitical situation and how much, can I swear on you?
Yeah.
How much more fucked the global economy gets.
Okay.
Bitcoin loves banking crisis and all that. Anyway.
For sure. We're going to take a quick break there. We're going to come back, and I've got lots more questions to ask you.
And that was a very quick break. Sorry if you wanted to go to the bathroom. Sam.
No, I did not. Sorry, before.
Okay, so the world's been fucked for the last couple of years. Okay, I'm just going to interject here. Like one of the things that makes the last maybe 10 years hard in general, and I'm biased because I wasn't alive in the 80s, or I was born in 89, but wasn't really alive in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s or the 20s, the Great Depression, etc. is I can only judge life based on what we see, but like a lot happened in the last 10 years, right? Like multiple wars, like multiple World War III threats, like certain economies collapsing, like political correctness, rise, drop.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, just like a lot's happened, right? The introduction of AI, and I guess this brings me to just what's been happening politically right now. I'm really into politics, and when I say that, I don't mean like I'm a hardcore left-leaning guy or right-leaning. Like I just find it interesting because I'm like, this is the greatest TV show in the world. Like just watching the news, right?
Yeah.
And like I try to keep my pulse on it, and it's so complicated right now. You have like the Russia-Ukraine problem, right? Which I understand would have affected what that does to Bitcoin, right? Now you have Israel-Palestine. You have like the very slow collapse of the US, right? Between left and right. You have, you've got what's happening in Haiti now. You've got so much happening in the world.
That's fucking
all at once, right? You had Ecuador, a couple of months ago, where they took over like national television, and it said there is so much happening.
Spotlights everywhere, man.
Yeah, and you just go like it all points towards like the distrust that people are having towards government, and the more they start putting faith into something else. Or I saw this really interesting clip yesterday, just scrolling through YouTube Shorts, and it was are you a Game of Thrones fan?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a scene. I'm not good with the characters' names. What's the smaller stature man?
Oh, Ben Dinklage. Tyrion.
Yeah. Okay, and he's talking to this bald man, and he says, "Oh, how are you at riddles?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, there's a priest, there's a king, and there's a swordsman, and they're all together." And he's like, "Who do you think comes out victorious out of that situation?" He's like, "Oh, they're all trying to kill each other." And he said, "Oh, the swordsman." And he says to him, like, "Well, isn't that interesting? Because if swords ruled, wouldn't the swordsmen be the ones who rule the kingdom?"
Yeah.
And he says, "But the sword can kill." He's like, "Well, the most powerful thing is power, and power is where you believe it to be."
Treasure.
And I see like a big correlation between something like that and just like the devaluation of, it's like a company, right? Like we've seen this in the stock market. I was trying to explain this to my partner yesterday, right? Lots of tech companies can be valued at billions of dollars overnight, right? And I'm like, it's not that it's like actually worth that, but if everybody believes it's worth that, then it's worth that.
Yeah.
And how do you manage to make sort of these decisions, or what are your thoughts about making decisions within everything that's happening geopolitically? Because it'd be very easy to decide to go all in on something because it seems like the world's collapsing, and I think at the same time it can be really easy on the opposite end to just want to take like a nihilistic approach and just say, screw it, the world's ending soon anyway.
Yeah. I think it's really important to have one foot in both camps and be very conscious and observant of the trends and the flows of what's going on, because there's a lot of spotlight, a lot of distractions, a lot of noise, and you have to filter that out and have one foot or one eye on the future, on the positive. How can we approach the now in the best way possible? And in my view, that is a peaceful protest by trying to move to a system that is fairer, more transparent, and better. Because I really don't, a lot of this is the way it's going, I feel, is people are losing trust in institutions, so central banks, big institutions like, let's say, World Economic Forum, another good one. There's many others, so I can't think off the top of my head. But we're moving towards that lack. It's the classic fourth turning, where we've seen a centralisation of, I guess, civilization and power structures. And in the fourth turning, and this is kind of, again, those cycles come together, we didn't see a pivot back towards decentralisation, localised supply chains, fairer models, and it generally coincides with a break of a global currency or a break of monetary power structures, which is often the most violent periods of human history. Whether it be the collapse of the Roman Empire from inflation, and it was a good example. With the back end of the Roman Empire, you could almost map sort of the start of the decline of the Roman Empire when Roman Empire emperors began to be a bit clever by half, and what they'd do is they'd have silver or gold coins, and they'd start to trim the edges of those silver and gold coins, and they'd put those little trimmings off to the side in a pile, and they'd say to their smiths and their treasury agents and whatnot to melt that down and create new coins. And suddenly you've got coins out there that have been slowly cut away out, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but you're creating more coins and adding to the overall problem. So there is a nice sort of convergence there of money is the core of so much of our problems. And I think you can trace back a lot of what's happening in the United States. You could go back to the late 1970s when Nixon took the United States off the gold standard, so that every dollar in circulation was pegged to 1 ounce of gold, or whatever the denomination of gold was in Fort Knox at the time. And the United States, up until the 70s, incredibly prosperous post-World War II power. It was the biggest empire in the world, the only empire in the world. You could go back and sort of see how prosperous it was economically, and I guess in a societal cohesion sense as well, whereas it's the exact opposite now. So they went off the gold standard in the 1970s, and that was the start of money printing to fund more wars and constant debasement, socialisation of lots of different things. Anyway, so you can dive into that rabbit hole as well. But I think when you go off hard money, where there's accountability, so you can't just go, I want to buy that new car, so I'm just going to take out a bunch of debt and pay for it. You actually have to make that money first, hold it, it's physical, and earn it via hard work, versus what we've seen through COVID and whatnot. It was the era, and this was the peak, I think, the era of free money. Everyone was given a whole bunch of cash. They printed something like $7 trillion and just gave it to everyone. And that's, to a great degree, I think what's caused a lot of the inflation that we see. But yeah, so navigating the geopolitical sphere is hard and easy.
To anyone who doesn't understand that, like here in Australia, like I feel like you'd have to be pretty naive to not say, let's say you got given $20,000 extra to buy a home, and that $20,000 extra just got added to the charge of what that new home would be.
100%.
Like it was
adds to the bidding process.
Here goes this, and then here goes that.
Yeah,
it's
here's your first homeowner's grant, and you go there, but suddenly it's been pushed up higher, and premium's been moved up, or your stamp duty's gone up, or all this kind of crap. It's just made harder. And Australia's one of
Australia's going to be very interesting to watch politically and economically because we have almost the biggest property, excluding China, we've got the biggest residential property bubble in the world, and our politicians cannot let it go bust. So that means if we do go bust, let's play this out right. If the property market does bust naturally over time, and there's no sort of plugging the gaps. If it goes bust, what the government has to do is bail out the banks because they are going to get hit so hard. And what does that mean? They cut our currency in half. So that's why they cannot let the property bubble go. So the status quo is preferable to letting that happen. So they're going to keep it propped up no matter what, and that's why you're seeing sky-high immigration coming in. We had 700,000 new people brought in during a cost of living crisis, during an inflation crisis. That helps keep wages lower, pushes up rents higher, makes things a lot more difficult, and keeps mortgages higher, keeps the taxes rolling in, keeps that debt bubble going. And there might be people that disagree with that, and that's fine, but it makes no sense to bring that amount of people in, during that. And it's almost creating like the have and the have-nots has never ever been this far apart. If we're importing all these people, we're essentially creating a slave class, and then the second, third generation Australians been here, a lot longer. The middle class is now having to, not decide, but they're being forced either into that lower class where they're just working their asses off day after day and not being able to get ahead, or they're lucky they have parents with property they can borrow. They have a bit of savings. Again, they come from affluent families, they have amazing jobs like high six-figure income jobs where that's fine. Well, they're in a partnership, they have a good partner. Both two incomes. You need two incomes these days. If you do not have two incomes, you're fucked. I mean that. I hate saying that because it should not be this difficult. On a single income, you're very lucky if you can find a rental where you're not, all of your, more than 60 to 70% of your income is going to expenses. I'm focusing more on this. I don't know if you saw a Facebook post I did the other day. I'm focusing on more of this now because of my son. He's only about to turn 3. I am terrified for his generation. If they want to start a family or look to live the Australian dream. It's unless you move out into rural areas where you can, it's a perfectly fine thing to do if you want to do that. But it's away from everything that we in the city, our friends, our family, all that. So it's a shift that we have to get used to, and I'm sure where it ends up.
Well, I just find it interesting to watch. Like I come from Chile, a country where it's pretty well known that you don't have like an upper, middle, and lower class. You have like upper, high, lower, middle, or like a high class. Like it's significantly different. It's not like you just live at Burnside. It's realizing like you live at Burnside, but you have like apartments and you have like a beach house.
And it's been so interesting to see